Game 2. The scenario for this game is a little bit complicated. We have 5 speakers that have to be split into 2 groups, those who are going to be in the gold room and those in the rose room. That'll be enough to allow us to build some categories and to make a roster of the things that are going to be used in the game. But the slots are a little more complicated. We're told that there will be exactly 1 speech at 1 and 1 at 2 in each of the rooms. So that would allow us to put in 4 spaces, but the final space is a little bit up in the air. There's going to be a speech at 3 p.m., but we don't know which room it's in. So we can add that to the sketch by sort of hovering it in between the 2 categories there. There's a speech at 3, but we don't know what room it's in. And that's about all we can do before we go to the rules. And we have 3 rules. The first rule puts M and L into the same room and says that M has to be earlier than L. That second part is easy enough to put in place. M is in front of L, but we do need a symbol to indicate that M and L are in the same room. Normally we would put a little box around them to say that they are definitely next to each other, but we need to accommodate the possibility that we could put someone in between them. So they're in the same room, which means they're going to be on the same half of the sketch. So I would just put a line underneath them like that to indicate they're together, though I don't know, they could be in gold together or in rose together, and someone else could be together with them as well. Additionally, if M's in front of L, we know that M can't be last, and if M is in front of L, we know that L can't be first, so we could notate that directly underneath the spaces. Rule 2 just has a couple of exclusions. It tells us 2 things that are not allowed to happen. We're not allowed to have Y in front of Z, and we're not allowed to have X in front of Z. Don't confuse this rule. It doesn't mean that Z is definitely in front of them. Z could come at the same time as them, he just can't come after them. This rule does allow us to make a deduction about when Z goes. Think, we know that Z won't be able to go third, or in the 3 p.m. block, because if it went at 3, both Y and X would definitely be in front of it. The question is, could it go at 2? I think if Z were to go at 2, we would need 2 different people to be in front of it going at 1 p.m. because there's 2 spots at 1 p.m. L can't go there because he's never allowed there. M could go there. But if Z were at 2, Y and X would not be allowed to be in front of him, which means that there would only be M left over for that first block. So since there aren't 2 people available to go in front of Z, Z is definitely going to have to be up front. It's definitely going to have to be at the 1 p.m. hour. And that's going to be a big deduction in this game. The final rule here is a conditional rule. It says if L is in the gold room, then X and Z have to be in the rose. And of course, if they were in the rose room, it would be in that order. Z would be in front of X because X is never allowed to be in front of Z. So whenever you have a conditional rule, write it into shorthand using the arrow shorthand. If L is in the gold, then Z and X are in the rose. Make sure to make the contrapositive for that rule. If Z and X aren't in the rose, which, because this is a binary game, which just means that there's only 2 options. You're either in the gold room or the rose room. If Z or X isn't in the rose, which would mean if they're in the gold room, then L has to not be in the gold room, which would mean L was in the rose room. If everybody has to be in one of 2 categories, not one category means in the other category. But once we have our original and our contrapositive, we're done with that rule, and that's pretty much where we're going to leave the sketch. There aren't any main deductions beyond what we've already written, so we're going to go on to the questions now. Remember, we're going to do the questions in the order that's most useful to us, which here is going to be to go 8, skip 9, go to 10, skip 11, go to 12, then double back and pick up 9, 11, and 13. We want to do the solution question first, then the locals, and then everything else. And we're definitely going to put questions like 13, a rule change question, off till the very end.